Imagine the picture. You're sitting around a campfire about 40,000 years ago. It's pitch black all around. There are a lot of bright stars in the sky, but your little light is of little use. It shines only a couple of meters around. And suddenly, right there, beyond the boundary of this dim light, there is a sharp rustle. You have no idea who's messing around, but your body has already figured it out without any prompting. Goosebumps covered your skin, the hairs on your arms stood on end, and your heart was ready to jump out of your chest. And then a very uncomfortable question arises, which believers do not like to ask terribly. What if the devil is not a fairy tale at all, which was invented by cunning priests to frighten people? What if it's an ancient security program that was sewn into our nervous system 1,000,000 years ago? What if the horned, hairy and fanged monsters in antique paintings are not a flight of fancy for artists? What if this is a real, detailed sketch of your main ancient killer? Let's think about this. Why does absolute evil look almost the same in all parts of the world? It doesn't matter what kind of culture you take, even the death tribes in Africa, even the harsh Vikings in Scandinavia, even the Indians in ancient America. It's the same picture everywhere. Horns, hooves, a bunch of coarse fur, huge fangs, and necessarily living somewhere deep underground. People on different continents lived for thousands of years. They didn't know about each other's existence and couldn't get on the phone to come to an agreement. But at the same time, they all managed to draw the same monster. How did it happen? Is this really just a wild coincidence that we are being asked to take at our word? Or does the whole of humanity really have one common genetic memory that we carry around without even realizing it? If you come to some smart professor of religion with this question, he will explain to you with a boring face, well, you know, the devil is just a collective image of everything bad. People needed a main villain, the opposite of the good God, to somehow explain where the suffering and mess in the world come from. It was purely by chance that different peoples came up with similar devils, because a person's imagination works about the same way. It sounds smooth and decent, but if you think about it, this explanation doesn't clarify a damn thing at all. Because if people really wanted to just label abstract evil or some idea of chaos, they wouldn't draw a specific body to a monster. Why does the pure idea of sin need hooves? Why does abstract evil need fur on its back? But among all peoples, this underground reptile has a very clear, detailed, purely animal anatomy. The same scheme works here as the police when they make a sketch of the criminal. Several different witnesses who did not communicate with each other describe the bandit. One had a chin in his memory, another a slit in his eyes, and the third a nose shape. When these sketches are superimposed on each other, an average but frighteningly accurate portrait of the attacker is obtained. It's the same story with Satan. People from different parts of the world did not make up fairy tales out of their heads. They drew a sketch from memory. And this monster has a very real, tangible prototype stuck in our history, which once terrified our ancestors.
Let's dig into biology and see how our brains work. Scientists have been promoting an interesting topic for a long time, which is called the theory of snake perception. The bottom line is this. Millions of years ago, our distant ape ancestors were not cool hunters at all, but ordinary food. We were eaten by everyone who was not lazy. And the two most important enemies that literally educated our brain and forced it to develop are snakes and large predatory cats. A snake is a perfect nightmare for a primitive primate. She crawls silently, disguises herself perfectly, attacks with the speed of a bullet, and even releases poison. In short, it appears out of nowhere and immediately takes a life. Because of this, individual neurons have developed over millions of years in our head, in a special fear center, the amygdala, sharpened purely by snakes. They work lightning fast, faster than anything else. The second nightmare is big cats. Leopards and saber-toothed tigers are creatures with huge fangs and claws that guard you in complete darkness. Archaeologists are still finding skulls of our ancestors in Africa, where two holes are clearly visible. These are traces of leopard fangs. For ancient man, night was a time when you became completely helpless. We are blind as moles in the dark, and cats see like night vision devices. If you are left without fire at night, you are guaranteed to be devoured. From here, three things are stuck together in our heads: pitch darkness, a cramped cave where you can't hide, and fanged creatures that tear you apart. So much for the description of the classic hell that exists in any religion. But then a jam appears. Neither snakes nor leopards walk with horns and hooves. Then where did they come in the sketch of Satan? And this is the third most underestimated horror of our ancestors: giant wild herbivores. Primitive bulls, taurs, wild buffaloes, rabid wild boars and rhinos. The predator attacks to eat. It saves its strength. But a huge wild bull, if a primate accidentally got in his way at a watering hole or in a thicket, turned on the rage mode. He wasn't going to eat you, he was just impaling a man on his huge sharp horns or instantly trampling his heavy hooves into the mud. For a weak bipedal creature without weapons, meeting such a carcass is a 100% ticket to the next world. As a result, our brain combined all the main killers into one collective image. The devil is not a specific animal. It's a composite portrait of all the danger that awaits you outside the campfire. Now let's look at history. We take the old myths and see this animal mix there. In Egypt, there was an apophis serpent, a huge reptile that lives in the dark and tries to devour the sun. In Sumer, Tiamat is a dragon-like monster. The Vikings have an Ermengan snake that sits at the bottom of the ocean. And where did the Christian devil get goat horns and hooves? They just copied them completely from the ancient Greek Pan. He was such a goat-footed god of forests and wildlife. When Christianity came, they urgently needed to denigrate the old pagan gods so that people would stop believing them. So they made Pan the main demon, because he ruled the forest, the very territory from where wild animals always jumped out at people. We're going further east, the same song. In India, local demons, asuras and rakshasas, have always been painted with huge fangs and claws and said that they hunt people at night. In America, the Aztecs had the most terrifying god, Quetzalcoatl, who was directly associated with the jaguar and the darkness of the night. In Africa, all night spirits are werewolves, half human, half leopard. Different parts of the world, no internet or communication, but the result is the same.
Fast forward to the present day, to the 21st century. You live in a warm apartment. There are no leopards walking under the windows, but your brains have remained exactly the same as those of a savage from the Stone Age. And this system continues to work hard. Why do filmmakers make billions of dollars from horror films? Yes, because all the iconic monsters are assembled according to the same recipe. Fangs, claws, fast and silent attack from the dark. Remember the Alien or Slender Man? They move quietly, hide in the dark, and attack sharply. Horror directors don't sit over biology textbooks, they just intuitively found the very fear button that evolution hammered into our heads 1,000,000 years ago. From here, the legs of ordinary childhood fears grow. Why are the little ones so afraid of the dark and the fact that someone is sitting under the bed? After all, the child is not afraid of any sins or bad thoughts. He is subconsciously afraid that a predator will come out of the darkness and grab him while his parents aren't around. This is not education, it is a pure inheritance from the ancestors. Even the way we complain about severe fright betrays our animal nature. We say, "I have goosebumps," or "my hair stands on end." It's not just pretty phrases. This is a real physiological reaction of the body. When our hairy ancestors encountered a leopard or a wild bull in the savannah, their fur stood on end to visually appear larger and frighten the enemy. We have almost no fur left, and the ancient reflex still works every time we get scared. And now, the most interesting thing, which makes me feel a little uneasy. There is one theory in anthropologists. The whole horned and tailed devil theme has been used as a powerful political weapon in history. See how it works. As soon as a new religion comes to power, it immediately takes the gods of its competitors and redraws them as creepy demons. The Christians turned the forest Pan into the devil in order to defeat the pagans. In Egypt, the desert gods were declared enemies of the main sun god. That is, the image of a nocturnal predator which our brain fears instinctively was deliberately used by rulers and elites as a ready-made trigger. Is it necessary to show that a foreign tribe, another faith, or a political enemy is evil? Just put their image on a prehistoric monster and the people themselves will do everything. It turns out that fear of the devil is not just biology, it is the oldest and most reliable propaganda tool in the history of the world. Moreover, it was used long before the word propaganda was even coined. There are also examples that are closer to us. Think of the witch hunts in Europe or the massive satanic panic in America in the 1980s. No matter who was accused, the same things were always attributed to them. They gather at night, conduct secret rituals, look like animals, and sacrifice underground. It was never a description of real people. It was always a portrait of that very ancient beast from the savannah, which the elites simply pulled on anyone who needed to be destroyed. If you raise the bar even higher, it becomes clear that this scheme works everywhere, not just in old fairy tales. Every time the state or government urgently needs to create an image of an enemy that people should hate without further ado, the same architecture of fear comes into play. Remember the wartime posters? The enemies there are never painted by ordinary people. They are painted as animal-like monsters, some kind of wild gorillas or rats with fangs. Why? Yes, because our brain reacts to it instantly. The signal goes past logic, and instead of turning on your head and asking, "Are we really being told the truth?" you start experiencing pure animal rage and fear. Even the advertising of insurance companies works according to this scheme. They show you a dark street, an unknown from which trouble is about to happen, and immediately offer to buy a policy, that is, light and security. Urban horror stories about maniacs have been around for centuries because it's the same nocturnal predator just wearing a jacket and carrying a knife. Even in modern elections, politicians paint their competitors' banners in hellish colors. Red, black, add shadows and fire. It's not just a design like that, it's using the most ancient software in our head. Any reasonable argument loses to this instinct in a split second. Logic takes time. You need to sit down, calm down, think, weigh the facts, and the ancient fear of a predator activates instantly. That is why, at all times when it was necessary to quickly raise a crowd to war or pogroms, the same visual code was used. Not because politicians have little imagination, but because the old trigger has been working perfectly for 1,000,000 years.
And now the whole mosaic is forming into one clear frame. The devil is not an invention of religion. Religion has simply given a name to the nightmare that has been living in us for millions of years. Horns, hooves, fangs, fur, darkness, and a dungeon are not the fantasy of a frightened person. This is a real sketch that collectively made up our species while trying to survive and not be eaten. We didn't come up with a monster, we just remembered it. Every time you feel uncomfortable in a dark alley, when a horror movie makes your heart beat, when propaganda paints the enemy as a monster and it works, it's all an echo of that very night by the campfire. Satan doesn't live in hell, he sits in your head, in the center of fear, and he settled there long before people even coined the word sin. And the scariest thing here is not even that evil has the anatomy of a real beast. The creepy thing is that this ancient, blind mechanism of fear can still be turned on with one simple button. And every time someone tries to show you an enemy with horns, fangs, or out of the dark, you need to slow down for a second and think, is it really dangerous, or has someone just found a button in your head that is older than humanity and is pressing it with might and main? Look at your life. How many times have you made important decisions, not with your head, but with that wild gut feeling, just because you were scared by a picture, instead of being proven a fact? The devil is not someone outside. It's a working mechanism inside you that starts every time they want one thing from you, to turn off your brain and start panicking. Final thought. So, the next time you're home alone late at night, you'll hear the floor creak and an irrational animal chill will run down your spine. Don't laugh at yourself. You're not stupid or superstitious. You just remembered for 1 second who our species was before they built cities, wrote laws, and invented civilization. No one invented the devil. He was inherited. And perhaps the most honest portrait of evil is not the horned creature in the picture, but the simple realization that deep inside each of us there is still a creature that throughout its history was not a great hunter, but an ordinary dinner.